Welcome to part 2 of me building a deck. This is going to cover the support and tanks tab. Support. Let's go straight to the finished stuff. We want this thing. The ITO 90 has very good range, extremely good accuracy, and is not radar. I mean, it's not the best range in the game by any means, but look at the speeds it can do on the ground and road speed. 65% accuracy, 8 missiles. That is a very nice piece of equipment. I can unpin the infantry now. Let's take 3 hardened ones. Then we can have a look at these guys, which are obviously your long-range radar ones. I mean, you're going to take the ones with high accuracy. You're going to take hardened. These are pretty simple to choose from. I mean, equally, you could have a look at the Polish ones. I think just for the price, though, and how effective they are, these are great. That's just going to outrange or match the range of some of the anti-air choppers. Or anti-ground choppers, even. 2,800. I just don't think that's good enough for a radar. It's cheap, but that's all I can say about it. We'll come back to artillery in a minute. Let's have a look at the other anti-air stuff. Little Strellas. What's these guys? 25 points for some armor. It's not bad. For what it is, it's pretty cheap. And it'll be annoying for helicopters. And this is... wow. That's radar. I was going to say, that's quite a long range for aeroplanes and good accuracy. I bet that would absolutely drive someone bonkers. But it's going to be susceptible to seed. So, for its price, I don't know. I don't think it's worth it. What else we got? And yeah. Radar stuff from the Polish. That's fairly cheap and accurate. 80. Only 4 missiles though. And that's also the same but truck based. And that costs a lot more. Why? Oh, because its speed's higher. Just pin that for a second and compare it to the ITO 96. So, same range. Same amount of missiles. 5 points less. Why? Speed, I guess. Everything else is identical. And that's 10 points more for speed. I think I'll stick with the ITO 96 just for that extra bit of speed. All of these guys, the Sergi. Well, that's pretty good. For 15 and then 30 for 30. You get a nice little minigun. Decent range against everything. 40% accuracy. That's not bad. I'm not sure I'm taking it, but it's not bad. And that's an interesting little unit for 45. But its range just isn't good enough. For me, an anti-helicopter vehicle has to be at least 2,800 to match what the enemy is bringing at you with helicopters. Fine. I think we'll stick with those two. They're not cheap, but they're effective. The other thing to bring in would be like a standard Strela type unit like that. But again, it's just not got the range. Whereas these two are at least pushing that range. Especially the ITO 90 versus helicopters. Let's go with that. Let's stick with what we've got. Right. Artillery next. I like artillery that acquires its target and fires fast. The 10-second fire artillery are my preference, but I don't know if there's going to be any available in this deck. So let's have a look. We've got some Polish choices here, but I'm going to skip straight to the Finnish stuff, as they have some interesting artillery. So these guys are fairly cheap and cheerful. We've got one that's quite short range, but has another cannon. And we've got this one which has not much armor, good range, reasonable dispersion, decent HE power. Rate of fire is only 5 a minute though. Let's highlight that. I like to highlight things. We're going to skip over the rocket stuff and come back to it. I haven't forgotten it's there. Then we've got these ones here. What's this? This is a... well, that's quite a long range, but it's got a big dispersion. And it fires slower, but wow. Look at the armor on that thing. I think this is the one that's on a T-55 tank sort of hull. And that's why it has such a high armor. So that's impressive. But I just can't think when I'd want to use it. Moving on. These are mortars. Right, fine. So if we're taking some normal artillery then, it's going to be the Telak 91. And we can take 2 hardened, 3 trained. This is really difficult. Sometimes I feel like 2 aren't enough. So I'm going to take 3. Quite often just take 2 hardened ones these days, depending on the artillery piece, but sometimes it just isn't enough incoming fire, and you're better off having 3 shots incoming. Now, we've only got 2 more spaces in this deck, but I have to have a look at the rocket artillery before I look at the mortars, because Finland is in the very beneficial position of having some very good rocket artillery. So this is the Rak 76? Rak? I'm probably pronouncing that wrong, I'm not Finnish. I'll ask Richard if he can clarify that for me. This is a cluster round launcher. So it launches cluster rockets, AP power 3. Okay, it's not a smirch, but if you're fairly close to your target, the dispersion isn't too bad. You're going to make a hell of a mess of any vehicles. Little vehicles are going to pop, and big armoured stuff is at least going to be heavily panicked and take some damage. So after the Rak 76, you've got the Rak 89. This is a napalm rocket launcher. Now, it's not a Buratino, but when you don't have a Buratino available to your deck, that is very nice. I do enjoy napalm. And that's going to fire a lot of rockets per salvo. Is it 20 or 40? If it fires half of that, it's 40. That is a lot of napalm. So against a town or a forest, that's a fun toy. You're going to have to get pretty close, but that's a fun toy. So that's going in the deck. Now, do I want 2 hardened? Does it really... Does accuracy matter for this? Not really. Improves dispersion, I suppose. 10% versus 19. It probably is worth just taking the 2. Let's take the 2. Then the Rak 91, that's your standard HE rockets. Is it the Uragan the Russians have? It's very similar to that. Good range, good dispersion, HE power 11. Not that many missiles, but close quartered enemy infantry, small vehicles, and tanks are going to be panicked by it. It's going to kill everything else. Tanks are just going to be panicked though. That's a good piece of equipment. But I'm not going to put it in this deck, because I want some mortars. The reason for that is, what I want to do with this deck is utilise the tanks and step them forward using mortars with smoke. So, choices for mortars with the finish. You got the Telak 66. Again, I'm butchering these names, I'm sorry. This is a 160mm round mortar. Smoke, AoE, everything, blah blah blah. HE power 6. Dispersion's really good. They're big, they're slow. Not bad. Good range, 9,100 meters. That's pretty decent. Then we've got your standard 82mm. And then we've got the 120mm. 7,700. I think for me, while that one is tempting, the 66, because of its increased range and better HE power, I think, in the grand scheme of things, I'm going to take the 120mm because it's got more smoke rounds and it's going to do more damage to infantry in areas like towns than the 71 is. And the 71 doesn't have that many more rounds, does it? Not really. Let's go with that. It's only 40 points. I'll take 4 hardened ones. There's no reason I would bring more than 4 into a game unless they all got destroyed, and I'm just going to be sad anyway. Tanks. Tanks is an interesting one for the finish. Some people would say that they don't have a good selection of tanks. Possibly true. They do have some exceptionally good tanks, though. So straight away, I'm going to click down here on the T72 M1 PAIV. This nuisance has been the bane of my existence in so many games recently. 120 points, range 2275, accuracy 70%, stabilizer 40%, AP power 23. Now its armor isn't that high, but look at that AP power. So that's going in the deck, and we're going to take hardened ones because it's a reasonably expensive tank. This is the Charioteer. It's cheap. It's reasonably fast. No stabilizer. Reasonable accuracy. It costs 15 points. I think that would be quite entertaining to take in. I'm not going to put it in the deck yet, though. Let's have a look at everything else. So the T55As. Not much armor. AP power 17. That's pretty good for 25 points. Good accuracy. Not really great stabilizer, but if it's sat still in tree line, it's not bad. And the T55 Matty. So the Matty is a glass cannon. It's got a high AP power, but it's got a very poor armor rating. So for 50 points, you're bringing in something that is going to hit hard, but is going to die easily. Total glass cannon. Let's stick 11 hardened ones in, just for now. We might remove that and put a Polish tank in instead. And just thinking about the other tanks here. This is the T72 M1 mod. And if we pin it and compare it to the 120 tank, same accuracy, same AP power, it's the armor. That's the difference. The armor's a lot better. Everything else is pretty much the same. And you can bring in one veteran or two trained. Pretty cheap. I mean, 165 points isn't that cheap, but it's cheap in terms of it's got 21 front armor. I'll put one in for now. I don't think that's going to stay there. What else we got? Polish have T72s. Oh, there we go. T72S. Gun's not very good. Ah, 50% accuracy compared to the 120-point one there. I mean, I know it's got a missile, but 4 hardened ones of those. Again, pretty cheap. That is tempting, I must admit, actually. I like a tank with a missile. Then an accuracy of 50% in that missile, it's going to make you sad when it misses, isn't it? And the other options aren't very exciting. That's the only one with a missile. It's going to have to be that one. It's got decent front armor. 18. Bringing hardened ones, at least you're going to have better accuracy. You're paying for the armor and the accuracy on that cannon there. I'm tempted to bring in that just for the fun of it, but let's build the rest of the deck first. Well, that's the end of part 2. There will be a part 3, which will be the final part in this series, that will cover the last few sections of the deck, and that'll be up in the next couple of days. As always, please like, share and subscribe, comments and feedback down below, and I'll see you soon.